Now, I know because you listen to this show, you love Chicago. In fact, you probably know your community very well. Maybe you're involved in a block club or some other neighborhood organization because you're passionate about the place you live. Well, you might be able to turn that passion into a profession, helping others find neighborhoods that they love with a career in real estate. When you earn your license with Realtors Real Estate School, you'll have access to a community of real estate professionals who can offer guidance and mentorship. Learn how you can get started this summer. Visit realtorsrealestateschool.com/begin. What's up? So if you like me, living green and reducing your food waste is probably a little hard and complicated, right? But it doesn't have to be. Not when we're using Waste Not. Waste Not is an at-home composting service, and it's pretty simple. They give you a clean bucket, you put your food, scraps, paper products, and compostables in, then they come pick it up in like a week or two later, and they give you a whole new clean bucket. So give Waste Not a try at home. Check out wastenotcompost.com. Plus, our CityCast Chicago listeners can test the service with a free month by using promo code CityCastCompost, all one word. Today on CityCast Chicago, this city has no shortage of icons and symbols. I mean, just check out that Colbert Code open from last week.
Oh, say, can we eat hot Italian dip beef? Deep dish proudly inhaled until our hearts stop to beat. Lower wag.
But after a week with all these visitors using these references to Chicago, we wanted to know, what's the ultimate icon that truly represents the city for the people who actually live here? It's Thursday, August 29th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago is talking about. I'm back with the team, executive producer Simone Alicea. What's up, Simone?
Hey, Jacoby.
And we've got our producer Michelle Navarro in the building. Hey, Michelle.
Hey, Jacoby.
So there are these things that are clearly so uniquely Chicago that have become symbols for the city, from songs to movies to like literal symbols to moments in history. But I think some symbols resonate more with me than others. So we're doing a little tournament to see if we can determine which is the most Chicago icon to represent the city. And of course, Simone has developed some little rules for how we're going to do this. Simone, can you explain what's going on?
Yeah, so what we've done is we've created like an Elite 8 tournament bracket featuring some iconic sports teams, structures, music, and food. And since you two, Michelle, Jacoby, are our resident native Chicagoans, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys a matchup. You'll have a little time to debate, and then I'm going to ask for your picks. I will settle any ties, and then the winner moves on to the next round, just like a tournament bracket. Disclaimer, right? Just right out the gate. This list has 8 things in it. We could have done multiple episodes for any of these categories.
We had a starting list of dozens.
Yes. This is not an exhaustive list, but if any listeners want to weigh in or you just want to visualize this bracket that we're talking about, you can head to the link in our show notes or just head to chicago.citycast.fm. You should see it right on our homepage. So, for this first round of matchups, you're going to have 2 minutes per matchup to debate. It's going to be real quick. When the time is up, you're going to hear this sound. And that means you got to give me your picks. You guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay. First matchup of round 1. We're talking about sports. Which team is more iconic? Is it the 90s Bulls or the 1985 Chicago Bears? Go.
So I'll say my pick is definitely 90s Bulls. Now, I should explain that I don't know much about the 85 Bears. I mean, I know the iconic nature of the team, the Super Bowl shuffle, like the whole the Bears. Like, I know that. I'm well aware of that. Like, it's hard to miss that. But I think in terms of like the specific team, the players, and it's just, I'm also like, my family, my dad was like, at that time, my dad had just got to Chicago. by himself. He started working here. And so because he wasn't that interested, he had a bunch of really cool Bears gear that I now get to use. But like the 90s Bulls to me is just like one that we all hear about. We all know Michael Jordan. We all know Scottie Pippen. It's the Bulls. So I have to say, like, that's it.
No, I hear what you're saying. When I first looked at this matchup, 90s Bulls was my answer out the gate. I was born in 1991 during the championship run. I was coming into my own on that back three-peat. But I started to think, if you put any single one of those years up against the 85 Bears, 91 Bulls, 92 Bulls, 96 Bulls, I don't know if just one year competes against the 85 Bears. The 1985 Bears went 15-1, only losing one game the entire season. They pretty much blew out every team in the playoffs. I mean, Walter Payton ran for over 1,500 yards. Jim McMahon, even 40 years later, is still regarded as one of the best Chicago Bears quarterbacks. It's a low bar, I understand, but I think if you put up the 85 Bears against just one, not the entire dynasty, but just 1 year in that run, I think the 85 Bears take them down. And again, every other major team has won a championship in the last 40 years. The Bears somehow are still riding off that chip. Oh, that bell is loud in my ears.
All right. So it sounds like you two are in agreement on who wins this first matchup here. It sounds like it's the 90s Bulls, yeah?
I'm gonna go 85 Bears just because I'm gonna say 1 year versus an entire dynasty is already so slanted. So I'm gonna give them a puncher's chance by saying if they took on each year one by one, they knock them out. But it is tough against the whole dynasty.
So as a tiebreaker here, I am actually going to say the 90s Bulls here. To me,
obviously, it's Last Dance.
This is the thing to me. As a young person, like a child living in Seattle across the country, I knew who the Bulls were in the 1990s. I knew who Michael Jordan was in the 1990s, and I think it's just such a dynasty that you can't really get away from. So we're gonna say 90s Bulls wins this first matchup here. This next matchup we've got here is about a couple of iconic structures in Chicago. Which of these is more iconic? Is it the Bean or is it Sears Willis Tower? Go.
It's Sears Tower, and I'm going to start this. Celebrating 51 years in the city of Chicago. Let's be real. The Sears Tower was iconic when it finally opened in 1973. It remained iconic as the tallest building, not only in the country, but in the world for the first 25 years of its life. And to this day, Chicagoans still will go to blows over whether it's Sears Tower or Willis Tower. The Sky Deck remains at like the top 5 list of places that tourists and Chicagoans alike like to go to. And no matter where you live in the city, if you are in Roseland, if you are in Austin, if you are up in Rogers Park, you might be able to catch a view of it. And I think that ability to shine across the entire city, to have this iconic symbol, almost like a Batman symbol in the sky, that on the sunniest and foggiest of days, you can still make it out in the distance. I don't know. Just 50 years later, I think it's still that beast.
Damn, you about to convince me. No, I love the Sears Tower. I love that. But I'm going to have to argue that the Bean is probably just better in terms of like it's on the ground. I like when people are able to interact more with like structure and public art. And yeah, like you can go in the Sears Tower and up there for a hefty little rate, you know, but I think it's cool.
A good one. That was a good one.
It's like Cloudgate is so accessible. Like I remember going to it as a teenager, like with my friends, just hanging out around the Bean. And every time I've had a friend in town, like they were super excited to go to it. And it reminded me of how cool it is.
It's funny. These two structures probably go back and forth on what you call it. Says a lot about you.
I know, right?
Is it Cloudgate? Is it the Bean? Is it Sears Tower? Is it Willis Tower? This is a funny matchup.
So at the end of the day, Michelle, your pick, the Bean?
Yep. Cloudgate, the Bean.
Cloudgate, aka the Bean, and Jacoby, Sears Tower.
Sears Big Willie Tower.
All right, another tie here. I am also going to go with the Sears Tower on this one. I think it's it's that visibility. It's, again, something that you can see from many parts of the city, and just the look of it, it overshadows. And the fact that I do think that point about the bean being free is a good one, but the fact that you have to go and see it. Also, I just don't have that much fun when I'm there. I'm sorry. I'm not a big bean lover in general, so a little bias.
Hey, that second round finna be tough.
Yes. So for just a preview, the second round matchup is going to be between the Bulls and Sears Tower. But let's keep going with round one. We've got a music matchup here, two genres born in Chicago. House music versus drill music. Which one is more iconic? Go.
This was definitely one of the hardest for me of the picks because both are super nostalgic. I will have to start and say that I'm going with house because growing up, my older sister was a house head. So there was a lot of house music played since I could remember. It's also one that I've just never stopped listening to. It's dancey, which I love to dance to. It has just this energy that can just like lift you from any like stage of grief that you're at. Like it will just lift you. Doesn't matter who you are or what kind of music you listen to on the daily, but it just like breathes life into you. And I think like that is a necessary thing for the human experience. Like you need something to breathe life into you. And like house music will never not do that.
No, I love talking about each of these icons because I start to think about like what is their legacy, what is their lineage. And from house music, I think about footwork. I think about being at the roller skating rink for juke music. And yet, despite its 40, 50-year history, I'm going to stand here and argue for drill music, which is only, I'd say, 15 years old. And yet has had such a strong impact on the industry. I understand people listen to drill music and they ask themselves, is this just painting the picture of the violent conditions these individuals grew up in? Is it propagating and celebrating these violent conditions? And the truth is, regardless of your perspective, the music is still in some ways a strong picture of what happened to young people growing up in some of the most disinvested communities in Chicago. And as such, it has inspired people in Paris, in London, in South Korea, in parts of Nigeria, in New York, in Cali, this sort of reemergence of street tales. I know I sound old when I'm saying that, but it's something about hearing Chief Keef, Dirk, Katie got bands, all the way back to Pac-Man and King Louie, give these unapologetic tales.
Really struggled with this one. I think it's the toughest matchup, actually, of this entire bracket. And I am going to go with house, mostly for,
I respect it,
for the impact it has created across genres and across, this is one of those kind of low-key ones that has just infiltrated across music and culture in general, whereas drill has so much more. People put so much onto it from the outside that it's more of Chicago reclaiming it, I think. And so for that reason, I'm going to go with house music. All right. Last matchup of this first round is a food matchup. We heard references to this in the clip earlier. We've got the Chicago hot dog versus deep dish. Which one is more iconic? Go.
I'm going with deep dish. I don't care how anybody feels about it. The conversations that you real or not a real Chicagoan, if you eat it, we only eat it on weekends, birthdays, it doesn't matter. Last time we were having a conversation about tavern style, Caroline Patton, our director of marketing, says something very interesting, which is you can find thin crust pizza everywhere. You can find a version of a hot dog everywhere. Deep dish, I haven't been everywhere in the United States, and I imagine there are some pies everywhere, but it is so uniquely Chicago. It sparks debate. It is almost always being used around celebration, pizza parties, birthdays, family reunions, friends and family in town. While I enjoy the simplicity of just a generic hot dog, I personally don't like the Chicago dog, and so I take a slice of deep dish over it any day of the week.
I'm going to argue for the hot dog. It's just easy, accessible. You can't get a slice of deep dish, but you can get a quick hot dog. It's like deep dish, you got to go with like a group to buy it. And so for me personally, I didn't get it as often. Hot dogs, I just associate them with like being downtown, going to Navy Pier, going to, like a sporting event. And so I just associate it with that kind of like fun outside. You know, like it's something that I don't like crave, but when I have a good one, I'm like, damn, this was a good hot dog. And I appreciate it like that. I've said this many times before, but I just enjoy everything that's on it more than the actual hot dog.
Throw all them ingredients away. Get out of here. It's too much.
If this was like a jibarito versus an Italian beef, I would have been pulling my hair out. I can't pick because I'm obsessed with both.
Well, we'll add that to the next time we do this. We'll make that the food matchup. Okay, so we've got another tie here. This one, I thought I knew what I was going to say going into this, but Jacoby, I think you might have brought me around actually to the deep dish. I do think the deep dish hits that great mix of what I think a true Chicago icon is, which is it becomes the thing that represents us, but also people on the outside don't really understand it. And only the people who live here kind of get what it's about and love it the way it should be loved. So I think I got to go deep dish.
And I think a good amount of Chicagoans don't like deep dish or also have to feel like they have to remind people that it's not the icon, but even in that argument, it is. You know it is. It's just not your favorite.
The best Chicago symbols, I think, are a little complicated, and deep dish is a little complicated. So I think that's where we got to go.
You know us, we've always got the next festival you got to check out, and this Labor Day weekend is Taste of Polonia Festival 2024 at the Copernicus Center in Jefferson Park. It's the biggest and oldest Polish festival in the U.S. with over 60 performers and dozens of merchants across 4 days and 4 stages. Go on and celebrate Polish culture with classic food and beer and bring the whole family. They're going to have a kids stage in the jumping zone for the little ones. You can even catch stars from Poland like DJ Berka, Krzysztof Sugowski, and Junior Stress. Taste of Polonia is August 30th through September 2nd. You can get your tickets today at topchicago.org. One thing I've learned doing this podcast is that every Chicagoan has an artist deep inside of them, even if they don't know it. Nah, I'm serious. All of us should get a chance to unleash our creative side in the greatest city in the world. And if you like, Kobe, where do I start? I got you. Art City is a gateway to the visual arts in Chicago. It's run by independent local artists, and you can either check out their classes or head over to their gallery, but maybe the best place to start, a classic paint and sip class. An expert will guide you through painting a beautiful piece of art that you get to take home, all while sipping on whatever you like to sip on. So bring a friend, bring a drink, and bring out your inner artist. Head to artcityshy.com to sign up for a paint and sip class, and while Art City's prices are already great, you can get a discount with code 5OFF. That's the number 5 off. I got the website for you again, artcityshy.com.
All right, so round 2. You guys are going to have a little more time to debate. This time you're each going to have 3 minutes. So we got just 2 matchups here. You're going to have 3 minutes to talk about each of them. First up, 90s Bulls versus Sears Tower. Which one is more iconic? Go.
I think this is a fair comparison because they both have decades of history on them. And while I think when people thought of Chicago, they thought of the Sears Tower for a long time, I think the two sets of three-peats completely washed that. The 90s Bulls got to be here during a rise in fashion, a rise in the internet, a rise in basketball, both domestically and internationally. Michael Jordan, to this day, is one of the most popular basketball players of all time, and he hasn't played basketball in 20 years. Kids growing up in Chicago to this day are still familiar with Michael Jordan highlights. He's still in that number 1, number 2 spot of all-time basketball greats. And if you walk outside with a basketball or with a Bulls throwback jersey, with a Bulls throwback starter jacket, You fly as hell. You look cool as hell. And I just think it endures. Sears Tower has been passed up a few times now for tallest building. No dynasty has passed the 90s Bull in the sort of 6 titles in 8-year window. They haven't been trumped yet in any sport. The Sears Tower has been shown up a few times.
That was so good. You just convinced me there. So I was going to say Sears Tower because you were mentioning like 90s Bulls already happened. And it feels like we're just kind of like anything that comes after them, we're always going to compare. And like, it's just on its own. It was so great. We're always going to be nostalgic about that era. And though I completely agree with your argument about how legendary it has become to not only our city, but to like the world, because even outside of the United States, you see people rocking Bulls and they know what's up. So it's like, I totally see that. But I think because it's still like, it's more like nostalgia at this point, the Sears Tower is just there and it's going to stay there for as long, as whenever it'll be there. And one of my favorite
Last Dance documentary about the Sears Tower.
Hey, don't take my time. Don't take my time. Just
reclaiming my time.
Reclaiming my time. And one of my favorite things too is like whenever people come visit, or like even for me, like if for some reason I'm like confused about where I'm at, I go to the spot where I can actually see the Sears Tower. I look at it and I can tell you if I'm on the south side, if I'm on the north side, if I'm on the southwest side, if I'm on the northwest side, if I'm on the west. Like I could just tell, like it is my compass, and it will always stand there, and it's just, that's it. I just gotta end it there.
That's a bar, Fall. It's always my compass is a bar. I know it's bullshit because you ain't looking at that to know where you is. You know where you at, Fall.
No, but that's true.
A bar, dog. That's
but
a bar.
I be telling people, like when my friends are just like, "Oh, where are we?" Like I don't know where I'm at right now. I'm like, just look for it, and you'll see. Like if it looks a little
where is it?
You're on the west side.
If you get the little mama in front of it, you're south. If you don't see it, right? If the Hancock is on the left side of it, you are north. You made a good argument there. Always my compass is a bar.
This is really tough, you guys. This is really hard. I think I'm gonna still go with the 90s Bulls, and here's why.
Real.
I think to the point of both recognition, how easily recognizable it is to the outside, but also the infiltration into culture, not just in Chicago, but worldwide. My cousin asked me for a Pippen jersey like a year ago. You know what I mean? My 13-year-old cousin. That is sort of the level we're at.
The personalities on that team, both in the 90s, your Rodmans, your Mikes. Oh my God.
We'll talk more about it. We got to get to our next matchup here in the second round, and that is house music versus deep dish. Which one is more iconic? You've got 3 minutes. Go.
Nah, I mean, I have to stick with house.
It's house.
House. Like we don't even need the 2 minutes. We give up our time. Like we're just all gonna agree that it was house music through and through. Like, come on now.
Yeah, I had a hard time picking drill the first time around because again, I think if we were thinking just like, if you ask somebody right now, who is Frankie Knuckles? Who is Chief Keef? Maybe I'd argue the majority of people would know Chief Keef, but I think, as Simone pointed out early, the infiltration of house music across genres, across the pond, like the reemergence of electronic music in the last couple of decades, and that the history lesson that's required us to do, sort of celebrating the history of house and seeing Chicago remixes from Terry Hunter, like. Chosen Few is still big. We're doing more house music festivals every summer now. I think there's a house record store about to open up on the south side of Chicago. Shout out to Block Club Chicago now. And so, yes, house music was 40 years ago. It's fire right now. We love you, Deep Dish, but like, sorry, you ain't getting us moving in the club quite like that.
Exactly.
Do we want to just hear the bell?
Yes.
We are now at our final round to see which is the ultimate Chicago icon symbol. We have the 90s Bulls versus house music. Y'all are going to have 5 minutes to talk about this, come to a conclusion, maybe have some back and forth, and we'll see where we land. Ready? Go.
Gee, this is a tough one. It's just so much legacy between both. And I just can't help but think about the house music episode we did and how sound rich it was, how, like you said, nostalgic it was. I learned so much about how now it's a revered genre, but at the time it wasn't pedestaled in the same way. It wasn't treated with the same amount of reverence. It was seen as underground in the club, an alternative scene. And so its endurance over the last 50 years, I think, is a testament to just how groundbreaking it is, how amazing it is, how uniting it is. But when you rewatch The Last Dance and you hear about the dominance, not only from Chicago fans, from Bulls players, when you see how the Bulls contemporaries saw them, and then let me just throw something else in here. The fact that from the 90s Bulls, we got Space Jam, a animated real hybrid movie in which Michael Jordan explained to the world that the reason I was gone for 2 years was not only baseball, was because I was kicking it with the Looney Tunes. He got his contemporaries to star in the movie as less than professional athletes. And then once the movie came back, he came back and dominated them another 3 years. Like, stop. It's the cockiest, craziest move. I think 90s Bulls reign supreme over house music, despite it only being a time capsule that we can never go back to.
Great argument. Okay, so I'm gonna stick it with house again. Aside from it being a personal connection to me, but I just feel like everyone I've met, like, there's not one person that has something bad to say about house music. I've never met a person who doesn't like house music. And going to the argument of the Bulls, I definitely feel like people know that, like, the legacy and how iconic it is. But I think I'm just going to argue for the fact that this is something that's still living and growing. And like, we've seen it take it to, like, from the 80s to like deep house and Chicago. And then Detroit took it with the techno. And then they took it all the way to London when they were, like hitting up people from Chicago being like, yo, you need to fly out over here. We need to bring you over here, and bringing it back to Chicago, doing ghetto house and like, and then, of course, it moved to different cities, but it's just like, it's still so true to its nature. Like, the core elements are all still there. And then also just looking at the social political aspect of how it united, like the gay community, but also like the Black and Latino community. I feel like they're really tied to that. Like, people's grandparents / people's parents were listening to house music in their homes. Like, it's what I was at the parties. Like, it was a music that no matter what the lyrics were, like, we were all dancing to it. And so I think like, and we still see people dance to it on the streets of Chicago today, whether that be a street fest, whether that be like a backyard party, a block party. As an audio producer, I feel like I'm always going to be skewed more towards like the power of sound and just like what it does to us. And you don't have to be a producer to be into music or to feel what music can do to people. But I do feel like house music just has this like trance where it just surpasses people and personalities and icons. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, if you hear it and you like vibe with it, like it's enough to like stick with you.
That's a good point. I mean, I don't know if Frankie Knuckles dropped 38 on the Jazz with the flu or food poisoning or being hungover, but that's a very good argument. And again, Jesse Saunders to the contemporaries, the Laurie Branches, the being able to still see, touch, and listen to some of our great pioneers, to be able to memorialize the ones who have already gone on. I think we're in, the house heads will tell you it's never left, but we are in a good period in which people are re-embracing, finding for the first time, living in the nostalgia of their youth. But I wonder, house, when it came out, it was a genre for, the adults, teenage, young adults in the club. When the Bulls was dominating, grandmas down to grandkids was watching that together. And I wonder if that uniting factor in the moment gives it an edge.
Woof, guys, woof. This is so difficult, I think. Here is where it comes down to me is, number one, if you ask somebody because, right, I think everything we've talked about today is clearly iconic in some way. It is meaningful to Chicagoans. It has legacy history, and something that is more than just, this is what tourists do when they come here. But with these two, I think the deciding factor for me is if you ask somebody from outside of Chicago about this thing, does it make them think of Chicago? And I think with that in mind, I think it's still got to be the 90s Bulls and that just has to do a lot with, because house has infiltrated so much into music overall, it is easy to kind of lose that history and legacy in the education aspect of it because it was marginalized in its early days. Some of that I think got whitewashed a little bit as new genres cropped up. That doesn't make it any less meaningful or again influential. But if we're talking about like the thing that represents Chicago, but also that Chicagoans claim, between the two of them, I gotta go with the Bulls.
No, so real.
No, that's a great point. It was a tough 1 seed from the start. I think even when we start putting the list together, 90s Bulls just sort of jumps out to you. And it's been brought up by people who are sports fans, people who are not, people who are old, people are young. The fact that the 90s Bulls feels like still a relevant talking point 30 years later is so cool. And I think I mentioned this earlier this week. We basically can celebrate the 30-year anniversary of the Bulls for like 8 years. 2021, 22, 23, you got championships. But then 6, 7, 8, we back to another three-peat. And that's I don't think any other sports team outside of the Celtics in the 60s and 70s has ever had such a window of domination that their team can eat on it for I think we still got another 15, 20 years to just munch on that dynasty without feeling like we are just decrepit.
This was really, really tough. If you want to, again, see the bracket. Also, if you want to weigh in, maybe y'all have different opinions from us. We're going to be running this as a survey for the next couple weeks. You can head to the link in our show notes or to our website, chicago.citycast.fm. It should also make an appearance in our Hey Chicago newsletter, which if you go to our website, you can subscribe to it, and then it's right in your inbox every single day. And you don't have to listen to me tell you where to go every single time. Makes it super easy.
And if you are an overachiever and you really want us to hear your thoughts, leave us a voicemail at 773-780-0246. You can also text that number and send us what you think should have been in the bracket, who you think should have won. You might hear yourself on the podcast. I want to give another huge thank you to our super production duo, our executive producer, Simone Alisea. Always good to have you on.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby.
And shout out to our producer, Michelle Navarro, who technically was the first person to argue for the 90s Bulls. So I think that makes you today's winner, Michelle.
Oh, thank you. I forgot about that. But yeah, I feel like when we were just talking about this conversation, we did say like, that's going to be it.
Now we had a feeling.
Thanks, Jacoby.
One more thing before we get out of here. Some good news. The Chicago Sky are home tomorrow night to take on the Indiana Fever. Yes, another Angel Reese-Caitlin Clark matchup. The Fever lead the season series 2-1, and 2 of the games have been decided by just 1 point, so you are in for another good game. Check the show notes for more information. This Labor Day weekend, the Cubs, the Sox, and the Chicago Fire are all home, so visit their team sites for full schedules. As always, I appreciate you for listening and reading. We're going to be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.
I think, God, this is really, really hard. I think I'm
2 minutes, go.
I know, right?